So, but I'll have you do an introduction in a second. Let me just
You
get
can
back
see
on the
us.
headphones on this
You can
side.
see us.
So, Ericka, thank you
I
for
don't know
coming
why I
out to
thought
do
it was
this.
radio.
Yeah, this will be great. All
It's
right.
okay.
Okay,
Don't
so
worry about a
Denise, if
thing.
you want to introduce, pick
Right.
away.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, now wait a second. I'm
Okay.
not sure. Oh, I think I know why. Not a worry, but I think I ought to plug my headphones in, or they just won't tell me anything. Whoops.
I didn't put any earrings on.
Let me turn off Tammy. Tammy's
I
still
understand.
playing
Believe me.
there.
I'm sorry I didn't make it clear.
I
That was
thought
quite a
it
great
was.
show. You can ask
It's all right.
you can catch it
We're here now.
anytime today. La-di-da. One little there. Now,
You look
speak to
great.
me, baby.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I see my shoes?
Okay, we're live.
It's good to be like this.
Yeah.
I've experienced that. All right. Good morning. I'm Denise Sullivan. We're live here at Bird and Beckett Books in San Francisco, and this is the San Francisco Live Talk series back after a brief hiatus. My guest this morning is Ericka Scott, Director of Projects with the African American Cultural District here in San Francisco, and someone who wears many hats and does all kinds of things, a lifelong city resident, and I want to talk to her about all of it. Good morning, Ericka.
Good morning, Denise.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. I'm glad you could make it, really.
Thank you.
One of the things that, when I think about who I want to have, come and talk with us, you kind of like make the perfect type of guest because you have such a long history and such a diverse area of interests that intersect with a lot of interests that I have. We have a lot of people in common that we might even know about. We might not even realize until we get talking.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
excuse me, and that's something that I noticed with people who have spent, the majority of their lives here, were born and raised here. You get to a point where
Yeah.
you kind of get to
know everybody.
right?
Somebody's always connected.
Yeah.
That 6 degrees of separation is a real thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's really true.
Yeah.
So you kind of have been working in the arts, but now this primary function that you have at the cultural district as director of projects is probably taking up a lot of your time as your job.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you're a small business owner.
I am.
You're a mom.
Yeah.
You work with the incarcerated population to bring art from the inside outside.
Yeah.
And probably
Yeah.
many other things that I don't know. So
Yeah.
let's start a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We'll go in the Wayback Machine
Okay.
to growing up in the Fillmore. We talked about that when we talked the first time about, just what it was like to be
Yeah.
part of a neighborhood. San Francisco is so neighborhood oriented.
Yeah.
And you were a Fillmore girl.
Yeah, I was a Fillmore girl. So if we go way back, I actually lived in the Ingleside district until I was 11. My mom's mother and my uncle purchased a home that they grew up in. So we lived in that home till I was like 11, and then my mom was able to purchase her home actually through the redevelopment agency over in the Fillmore. And so that's how we ended up in the Fillmore. I think about it now. My kids say I make everything about race and inequality and things, and I try not to, but it's just such a reality. And now I think about to the homes where we lived on Golden Gate and Steiner, in between Pierce and Steiner. They were new developments. They remodeled some of the old Victorians, the redevelopment agency did. And when we moved in, they were owned by all African Americans. And now none of us live there anymore. We all had to sell our homes, So it's my history in San Francisco is bittersweet. I'm happy I grew up in the San Francisco, but again, it's just always so many disparities. And the good thing about it is that there's opportunities to bring awareness to it. And so now that I'm like embracing that, it's a good thing. It brings people together. It reminds people of history. I was in an Uber recently, and we drove past my mom's house, and I'm like, I used to live there. And the Uber driver was, just a white guy, probably in his late 40s or so. And we ended up having such a long conversation. He's like, I'm glad you told me that because I just would have never known, So it's opportunities to educate and make some new friends. So, it's turning, some dark clouds into some rainbows. So it's good. It's
Wow.
good. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's quite a distance, right? For some of us who've been really kind of in an extended period of grief about all the changes.
Yeah.
And you're talking about an entire community, entire population that was relocated, displaced from their homes, and so going back, whether you're driving through in an Uber or conducting your business there, which I really want to get to, because that's probably the where the healing is, right? You get to go home, right?
Yeah.
But reconciling all that while you're trying to make a life, raise your children, do your work, and everywhere around you there's someone is gone, something has closed, and it becomes unrecognizable. So where do you fit? Where do I fit? How do we piece ourselves back into this picture, right? There's so many threads, so I'm going to slow down and take it piece by piece. But you went to school in the city. You went to college in Berkeley. Just tell us a little about that experience, because I remember when we talked for the profile we did in 2020 at the top of the pandemic, right? It was there was a lot going on in the city with schools.
Yes.
And I think you said you went to Washington for a spell.
So I did go to George Washington. So again, I guess every story is, individual and unique. I have cousins who went to one school for 8 years and then went to high school and then went to college. But my family, with my mom and my brother and my sister and I, we transitioned a lot. So I went to a lot of different schools for different reasons. My mom also was a business owner. She opened a preschool, and I was 7, I remember. And when she could afford it, we went to private school. And then when she couldn't, we went back to public school. So, again, we transitioned a lot. But education was really important on both sides of my family, my dad's side and my mom's. And so it was normal for us to do well, to, excel in school. But when you talk about school, I remember leaving one private school and then we were in public school. And I remember being in the 4th grade, and we went to a school and some of the kids couldn't read. And at 8 years old, I knew that was a problem. I'm like, I told my teacher, what are we going to do? Like, because she kept skipping over the kids who couldn't read. Like, it was noticeable. And I was like, no, we have to teach them. Like, you can't just, act like it's okay. They're 8 years old. They got to learn how to read, So, again, just from my background and what I was taught, things that are given, and they're not always in certain households. I learned that early on, but my mom always made a point to give back. So, the same opportunities she wanted for us, she also wanted for the kids in the community. So she fought hard for other kids to get scholarships so that they can go to private schools and get tutors and mentors. Everything she did for us, she wanted to do for them as well. So I remember going to a school, my sister and I, and we were leaving out of the school. When you walk in, you see it was predominantly African-American Black kids. But as we were leaving, we saw a group of just, some young white girls, and it was like 7 of them. But it was really noticeable because everyone else we seen were just like, like I said, African-American kids. And so my mom approached them because they were like the same age as my sister and I. My sister's a year older than me. And she said, well, where are you guys going? So they said, oh, to class. And she said, well, where's your class? And they said, oh, upstairs. So they, went on their way. So my mom made a U-turn right in the middle of the hallway and went back to the office. And she said, there appears to be another classroom somewhere that you didn't mention to me. And so the administrator said, oh, that's the gifted class. So my mom said, okay, I want my girls in the gifted class. So they said, oh, well, they have to test. She said, give them a test, So we took the test. We passed the test. So now we're in a gifted class. And we're in 2 different classes. So I'm the only black girl in the class. And that had its own challenges. But again, it's like this other world that exists. And because most people want what's best for their kids. And obviously education was different in the gifted program. But it was just not even offered to certain people. Had we not encountered that experience, then we wouldn't have known about it. My mom, so when you talk about schools and then you talk about schools closing and certain schools closing, or what's really surprising to me now are the schools who were, when we were in college, in high school and middle school, certain schools were like known for being problematic. And now they're like the best schools. So it shows that with support, with resources, with funding, you can turn anything around. But it's a matter of who do you want to turn it around for, So you're right. Schools have a huge impact on just the trajectory of a child's life, especially here in San Francisco.
Yeah, and decades after your experience, we still see the same kinds of disparities, which is wild. These situation in Oakland with the schools closing, and it's just, how can we have this knowledge and not have come very far in that department?
Yeah. That's part of my introspection, and then just my conversations and prayer and asking God, what is all this about? Because as people, we could do certain things, but God can change anything tomorrow, But there's a reason, and I can't say I have that answer, but it could be where it's like, well, hey, we're fighting the same fight. What's the point? Or I encounter someone like you and you want to tell the story and more people get involved and you bring people together and we continue the fight, So it's just, it's a lot, and money and territory and property and the illusion of power, all those mean so much to a lot of people. And to hold on to certain things and to fight for certain things it's more important just than to just offer quality of life to other people, And so I think in this capitalist society and unfortunately the way America was structured, that's probably going to always be a fight. Mm-hmm. But then we can look at it, in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some of what you're saying, wow. It takes me a little out of the chronology, but it's really relevant because the way things are set up, children are left behind and elders are left behind. And then there's the people that, in general, the public isn't thinking about. They're unheard from. They're not covered a lot in the media. The incarcerated population.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And I know that you do some work there. And why don't you tell us a little bit about how that connection was made and why is it important, for the average person to get involved in that fight too?
Yeah. It's I'll say this and then I'll talk about that. Recently, I think it was 2018, right? A year or so before the pandemic. I started working at St. Ignatius High School, and I worked in social justice and the community service department. And being back, because I work a lot in the community. Most of my career, even if I'm running a business, it's still community centered. And so I haven't really been connected corporately or in institutions outside of the community for a while. And so now I'm put back into this institution of education, private education, and elite private education. And I recognize again, like the difference. Like, wow, when I walked on into the school, I felt like I was on a college campus. You know, it's a beautiful space to be in. And then I would literally leave there and go to Bayview's Hunters Point to help develop a tutoring program and talk about night and day, you know. And I say all that to say is because sometimes we don't want to make certain connections, and we're like, well, slavery, we haven't been in slavery in years. But when you look at the implications of slavery on one side, you know, there's a lot of big business established through slavery that continues on today. And so the families who were on the side of that, they're still benefiting. Whereas the families who were a part of the actual slave life and slave trade, we're still dealing with those after effects too. But it's like, oh, get over it. Slavery is over. And I'm like, okay, well, get over all the benefits that you have. You know what I mean? Like, because it's still, it matters, you know? And so that's how I'm so passionate about the world of the incarceration, especially the mass incarceration of Black men, because it still stems from the same system and the same disparities and the same outlook on how America sees our Black people, especially our Black men. And so again, growing up in the community where I grew up in the Fillmore, like I said, my mom and my dad at the time before they divorced purchased a home over in the Fillmore in the redevelopment. And on our block, we lived in a block where it was homes, actual Victorian homes. But right behind us was low-income housing. Down the street was more low-income housing. So it's just like so many mixed-use homes that they call it. And so a lot of the people that I knew or went to school with, some of them lived in the low-income housing. And so just that in itself it's a different world, you know. And so, again, my mom being a business owner, she was the person everybody brought their kids to. When we got out of school, it was no question on where we were going to hang out and those kinds of things. We knew we had to go to my mom's business. You know, we had a place. We had accountability. Other parents are working 2 and 3 jobs, you know, and so they didn't get home too late. And so sometimes kids are out and get into trouble, and that just, you know, leads to more and more trouble. And what is really significant to all of that is when I was accepted into UC Berkeley out of high school, I decided that I didn't want to live in the dorms. So I lived at home, and I would walk to the BART station every day. And walking to the BART station, there was a particular area where I knew a lot of guys would hang out. So I intentionally walked down that block so I could talk to people and meet people. And I met a couple of people and just kind of, you know, like built relationships and heard their stories. And talking about college at the dinner table was not the conversation for a lot of people where it was at our house, you know. And so I just automatically had a heart, you know, like, man, just think if life was different for them, you know, because now it's changing, and now people are selling drugs and going to jail and having babies at, you know, a young age. And it's like, you know, their whole life is just wrapped up that quickly, you know, whereas I'm going over to this campus and I'm just, like you said, I've always been interested in many things. So I'm studying in the planning department one day, and then I'm taking a women's studies class. I'm taking an education, you know, I'm just taking advantage of all this information and all this knowledge. And I know back at home is such a struggle for a lot of the people that I grew up with. So I always had a passion. Then it went a little deeper, and I ended up falling in love with somebody who was like, you know, in and out of trouble a lot. Both his parents were addicted to drugs, and his grandmother raised him. And it was just a totally different life. And, I fell in love, but at the same time, it was like, oh, I just really want to help him and help him change his life, you know. I don't know how all that goes. And then, so we were together for a while. We went to the prom together, and all that kind of stuff. And then we went our separate ways. And he was married, then I got married, and then my first husband passed away. He ended up getting a divorce, and we ended up reconnecting. And now we reconnected, and he's incarcerated, and but he was still the love of my life. And so the minute I heard his voice, it's like I was 17 all over again. And so we stayed connected, and now we're married. And so he always sends me these like really nice cards and letters, and for special occasions he'll send me like a really nice drawing. And he doesn't draw, but this one particular image, it was of us, and it was a photograph that we had taken, but the guy drew it and it looked just like the photograph. And so I told my husband, his name is Pride, and I said, who drew this? And he said, oh, Yusef. And I think at the time Yusef was like 75 years old, and he had been incarcerated most of his life. And but he's an amazing artist. And I'm like, wow, we need to let people know what's going on out there, So just kind of impromptu, my husband and I started collecting images from other artists, and he would send them to me. And so we were developing an art show, but it was not intended. It was just like, I just wanted people to see this fantastic work. And then just as things have it, I applied for a fellowship with Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. Got accepted into the fellowship, and so they helped us really develop the art show. Then the pandemic hit, and so it became a virtual art show. But I started getting submissions from people in New York and all over the country, and we showcased that it was called Beauty Behind Bars. And we showcased that with YBCA, and it was a virtual art gallery that my husband and I created, and he's still incarcerated. Yeah.
I want to ask you about that because last time we talked, it was just at the beginning of the pandemic, and we talked about the situation with COVID inside the prison and the difficulty being able to communicate because there was a lot of lockdown, literally lockdown, which, we call it out here. A lot of people took to talking about the COVID.
Oh, the shutdown, right?
Shutdown. Yes, let's make this distinction. These people were literally in lockdown and could not speak to their loved ones, and you had a hard time communicating, etc. Is your husband well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's doing good.
And the people that you care about and worked with, they made it through the pandemic.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. So
That's good.
Yeah. So he's doing good. He's doing good. I guess it was a combination of a lot of things, but lately, over the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of laws have changed, and a lot of the systemic and policy making for this mass incarceration has really been looked at. And so they're really adjusting a lot of the laws. And so I say all that is because he's in a program now. He's taking classes, and they're preparing them like mentally, emotionally on what it will be like to be back in the real world. So he should be home within the next year and a half.
Wow. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
That's
good news.
Yeah. And we've noticed a lot of people coming home a lot earlier. Because of these laws. Oh my goodness. Yes.
No worries.
So,
yeah.
So,
that's another happy ending.
Yeah.
This is really great. So, kind of intersecting with the show that you curated, the online show, you do have this physical gallery space now. This is the small business that you are the owner of, the Honey Art Studio, and I love that, it's a hands-on thing where people come to learn, but you also have the gallery space, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, and more importantly, it's in the Fillmore.
Yes. Yeah. I feel so honored that My brother's having an event today, and that's my son calling, trying to get some keys. So I'll talk to him later. So yes, so I'm so honored to have space in the Fillmore. I'm on Sutter Street. Originally, our art studio was on California and Fillmore, which was good just to be back on this side. But now I'm like smack dab in the middle between Upper Fillmore and what we call Lower Fillmore, and so it's fantastic. And I'm not. So I also teach entrepreneurship, and I help people develop their businesses and write business plans and those kinds of things. And I'm just saying this to say, like, anything is possible, really,
Right.
because I'm not really an artist at heart. Like, at heart, I guess I am, but by trade, I'm not.
Right.
Like, I've taken all kinds of classes in school, online, and I would have never taken an art class. Like, that was just not who I was. However, it's something that was given to me, and so I hold it really, really in high regard. And having this art studio, and now it's expanded to an art gallery, like, I feel so privileged, because again, that wasn't really the direction I was going in, but obviously it's meant. And now we have this amazing art exhibit, the photography of Harlem of the West.
Yeah, and we have
And you have that
we
book.
have the book because it's a really
Yes.
popular book here at Beckett, which is also a home of jazz performance.
I
And
see
so,
all the
and a lot
jazz,
of
yeah.
the musicians, surviving
Yeah.
musicians, right,
Yeah.
have been known to come by here. So this
Oh,
book is a perennial
awesome.
here at the bookstore,
Okay.
and we're very familiar with the authors, Lewis
Yes.
Watts and Elizabeth Pepin.
Yes.
So this is exciting because
Yeah.
the collection came home
Right.
to be seen in the Fillmore.
Absolutely. Yes.
right?
Yes. A friend of mine got in touch with Lewis, and we started the process and the conversation. So now he's loaning us the original images from the book. We have over 65 images at our gallery, and it's an amazing show. And I encourage everyone to come out and see it.
Which I know a bit about the history of the book and the curation process that the authors went through. And it took years and a lot of coincidence and this is the key. Talking to people in the neighborhood, getting to know their histories,
Yes.
going into that barbershop and saying, hey, do you
Yes.
remember a guy who used to play on this, right?
Exactly.
And over
Yes.
time, they collected
Then they
all
were
these,
able to collect all of it.
and then moreover, identify some of the folks in the photos, which were
Right.
also a mystery,
Exactly.
you know?
And so even now, that's what people are coming in and doing.
Yeah.
They'll look at it and they'll say, wow, I know my grandmother was around this time. So then they go home, talk to their grandmother, come back, and it's still building that conversation because we have some amazing photos of Lena Horne was there, Billie Holiday was there all the time. But then there were some people, like you said, we don't know who they are.
Right.
But now people coming and seeing and looking and then making those connections. It's an amazing exhibit, an experience for us all.
Yeah.
To do it. And then in our generation, it's really good because I hear about what the Fillmore was, but I don't really, really remember it like that.
Right.
So it's good, the history lesson for us too.
Yeah, making those connections. That's really cool. And also, like, I like this idea that kind of, against the odds, when African American families and businesses had left the Fillmore and been forced out, more to the point, in recent years, you are returning. And there's this real interesting touch point there at the so-called Lower Fillmore, where the crossroads where you go or reaching up to the Upper Fillmore and then the flatlands, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And you're right there in the
I'm
middle.
right in the middle.
And that's a real kind of heart place to be.
It's amazing. So we had our opening of the show, and we did a block party, and people from all over, both neighborhoods, Upper Fillmore, Lower Fillmore, came out, and it was just it was what I wanted without knowing it. And so it was fantastic. We had live music, a live performance by a fantastic singer. Her name is Butta. I don't know if you know who she is.
I don't know her.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
She did a sold out series at Yoshi's over in Oakland. Jazz, and she does just oldies but goodies. And so we had a live performance. We had some talks about some of the photos in the show, and just bringing the two worlds together. And I'm so looking forward to doing that more. I'm also a part of the Fillmore Merchant Association, and going and meeting with some of the team there, and then they came and supported the event. Bridging the two, and our gallery is Honey Art Studio, and so we're actually going to start what we call Honeybee Conversations. So the honey is the sweet and the fun, and we're coming together, and we're enjoying each other's company and music, but then we're also, it's the bee, so it's gonna be it's gonna sting, so it's gonna get a little uncomfortable, but I think this is the time.
Wow.
And we'll talk, and we'll probably cry, and we'll probably not agree on everything, but it's just bringing people together and having some real conversations, and seeing what comes out of that.
Wow, that's keep us informed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds great. And that kind of leads us into the work in the cultural district, right? Because we started by talking about San Francisco is so neighborhood oriented, and you've had kind of home bases in Ingleside, Fillmore, Bayview, Hunters Point, and it so happens that the cultural district is the 3rd Street corridor, basically Bayview Opera House and whatnot. But you are hopeful to draw people from all over the city.
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
Back to this area. But the idea is to preserve the resources that are already on the corridor.
So our mayor established the San Francisco Cultural District Program. And it is one of the areas, or one of the ways to look at gentrification and to address neighborhoods that were once so heavily infused with culture, native to San Francisco, and now it's kind of like not that anymore. Even you go to the Mission, and it's so different, even from when I grew up. And it's just new people moving in, and the people native to the area are being displaced and having to move out because of high costs and, all the implications of gentrification. And so the Cultural District program itself is to really preserve and to honor the history, the legacy of the cultures who were there and who helped to make San Francisco what it is. And so that is by music, it is by business, it is by history, it's by storytelling. It's just really preserving culture. And just to get a little technical, each cultural district is responsible for creating what's called a chess report. And so we have to go and do a lot of history, fact finding, focus groups now, interviews from people who were actually displaced, and really collect that history and preserve that, and then make sure in some instances that we're able to showcase that. And so our district is the San Francisco African American Art and Cultural District, and each cultural district is identified by geography. However, the founders of the San Francisco African American Cultural District, where I'm the director of district projects, were intentional for it to be San Francisco. Our geography is the entire 94124. Most cultural districts is about anywhere from 2 to about 6 blocks. But because of the historical contributions of African Americans in the 9424 district, we could not cut it off, because we've contributed to Bayshore, we've contributed all the way on the Hill, that whole area. And so we're actually the cultural district for the entire 94124. And our district supervisor, previously, Malia Cohen, actually signed the legislation for us to be an official cultural district. We are one of 9 now, and we're actually growing. So there might be 10, but there's 9 of us cultural districts throughout the city. Japantown was the first. And then there's Cathedral. There's the Native American Cultural District. And there's several, throughout the city. And our goal for our district supervisor, Shaman Watson, is he says, and it's true to San Francisco. When you go to Chinatown, you know you're in Chinatown. You feel like you're in Chinatown. When you go to Japantown, you know. And so the goal now for the African American Art and Cultural District over in the Bayview is we want you to know you're in an African American community. All people are welcome, but we really want you to experience that culture. So we are now embarking on a mural project, and we are going to actually show the history and the life and the culture through murals. And so now we are embarking on our second mural on the corridor, and one of our community-based organizations, they're called the IC, and they purchased the former Bank of America building. Yes, so now we're in partnership as a cultural district. Blue Shield sponsored us, helped to sponsor a mural, and Malik Seneferu, a renowned artist who's from Bayview, is going to create the art of the mural. And so we're working on that project right there on the corner of 3rd and Quasada, the former Bank of America building.
Wow, that's a pretty tall order, though. If the whole zip code is the district, and you have to give a feel and flavor of the culture in the entire, so you're not just relegated to those few blocks with some flags hanging.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, right. Because that was our initial project.
That's a big undertaking.
It's a huge undertaking, and obviously resources and finances are a big part of it. So we are focused on the corridor.
Yeah.
But as things grow and as more people get involved and to support the mission, then we'll be able to expand. But our goal right now is really that corridor, and we really want people to come and engage in business and see the art, and so we're developing it, and we're it's slowly but surely. I actually talked to a friend of mine, and she's a part of San Francisco Black Wall Street, an organization established by some young people in the Bayview, and our goal is we're just going to go block to block. And we're trying to really build up the business and the level of activity on the 3rd Street corridor.
Right. And I don't want you to play favorites, but
don't do it.
No, but come on. If you could just pick out a couple of the real gems, like the hidden resources and things that maybe a lot of people don't know or have gone underappreciated because they haven't explored Bayview Hunters Point to the degree that maybe they will be welcome to and encouraged to do soon.
So Cafe Envy is a small gem, a jewel in our community. And the Bayview Hunters Point is really significant in the African American culture of San Francisco because I don't know if it was legal, but I know by policy, African Americans can only buy property in the Bayview, in San Francisco. So that's like the original home of a lot of Black people in San Francisco. So again, similar to the Fillmore, there was tons of thriving businesses by African Americans over in the Bayview. And growing up in the Fillmore, even then, I knew when I went to the Bayview, I was going to see a lot of Black people. I knew the difference from the Fillmore and the Bayview. And over these last 20 years, so much has changed. Lots of businesses have closed, primarily a lot of the African-American businesses. And so, like Cafe Envy, it used to be another club, a lounge type area with soul food. Over 30 years ago. And so now it's like the rebirth. And so that's what's going on now. Another generation is coming in and saying, hey, we want to bring life back to the corridor. And so that's definitely one of the places you want to go. And they used to have live jazz all the time. And so now we're bringing that back after COVID and those kinds of things. But it's just some really authentic, really good soul food, and even with a healthy twist to it. So that's definitely a place to go to when you're visiting the Bayview. And then I went to Memphis, Tennessee, almost 2 years ago. And I was on Beale Street. And it was like, oh, this is fantastic. It's like, oh, that's a whole experience in itself. But what I did notice is predominantly African-American businesses, but then you'll have some sprinkles of another culture, kind of like little club, but everybody is friendly and everyone welcomes everybody. And so we're seeing that also in the Bayview. And so there's Grata Wines. And Barbara Grata is a fantastic. I love her. And she's an Italian lady, true to the heart. She has her Italian flag outside the window. And we have these really great honeybee kind of conversations, but just first. And she actually presses the wine in the space.
Wow.
So it's like some education, some fun. So that's definitely somewhere else you want to go and hang out. But again, we're building the community. There's a nice little spot. Her library is not this extensive, but she's probably trying to grow it. And it's JN Outreach, and that's Jackie Norris. And she does a lot of little things in her space. She creates and designs her own greeting cards. And she has lots of books to read. And then she teaches literacy classes there as well. Yeah. So it's like little gems along the corridor. Yeah. That's a good place to come and visit.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I know that your concerns are small business and culture, and keeping that vital. But when we're talking about that district, environment and wellness is super, I know the supervisor has been on it, and there are a lot of advocates for environmental wellness and repair, right? Does that intersect with any of the work that you're doing?
Yes. So as a part of the cultural district, we are to look at all aspects of life, and especially within that report that we're actually generating now, and land use and health and wellness is all a part of that. And so again, there's some controversy, as far as the land itself and the development and what's under the soil and all those things. And then the later impacts of it that, we have a really high rate of cancer rate in the Bayview. And we're thinking it's attached to, the land and things that happen as far as waste over in the Bayview, because again, it was an area where mostly Black people live. So you say, hey, we don't want this in certain neighborhoods, so we're going to bring it over here, so just all those, and they just intersect. And as a cultural district, it is part of our role to really look into that. And now, 40 and 50 years later, with the advancement of technology and just knowing more about land protection and those kinds of things, we haven't even scratched the surface really on what we can do to remedy a lot of things that have happened as it relates to land in the Bayview. But as a cultural district, yes, that's something else for us to look into.
Right. But there are things like farming, urban farming, and walks, trails along the water, and things that are rejuvenating.
Exactly. And that's down at the Indian Basin, right? There's like a huge renovation project going on there. And early on in my role as a cultural district, there was a project with the Indian Basin and San Francisco Municipal Transportation, SFMTA. And there's areas obviously in the city that are more dangerous to drive and walk than others.
Sure.
And so there's an area in the back of Hunters Point, and my aunt told me later that they used to call it Dead Man's Row. And literally because there was no stop signs, no stoplights, and people would just come around that corner, and a lot of people lost their lives. And so we were asked to join a project where they were going to help to put some barricades so that when people are driving, they would have to slow down. And so we partnered the cultural district, and we brought some color and life, and we did some murals along the K-rail barricades, which was definitely a good thing. But I just couldn't help remember my aunt telling me that this has been a dangerous area forever. Mm-hmm. But again, when you look at gentrification and new people moving in, and now it's like a big deal for the city to want to get involved, you know, whereas a lot of lives were lost when it was just Black people, you know. So again, as the cultural district, and even my work in San Francisco, and just me as a person, again, it's looking at the reality of the disparity, and you know, you can't hide it, you know, and you can't act like it doesn't exist. But then it's like, okay, but what can we do, you know? And so that was another project. And so I say that to say, I remember living in the Fillmore before the Fillmore Center, the housing development was built. And there were farms, many farms, and Black families. I'm not sure about ownership, but they definitely each had a plot. And they grew vegetables and those kinds of things. So sometimes for me, when I see urban farms and we're coming to teach you how to farm, it's like, no, we knew how to farm.
Right, exactly.
We knew how to farm. It was just like with urban renewal, they were, you know, the first thing to go. And then you got this huge high rise that we can't even afford to live in. And then you come again, like I said, and now you're coming to teach us how to farm. Like, that's not quite how it goes, you know? So, yes. But just embracing, I think when people, if you just acknowledge that people were here and people were thriving and people, eating healthy was good for us. Like we you know, we could only grow food and eat vegetables and things like that. So even just the stigma sometimes that Black people don't care about health and eating well and you have to come and teach us how to farm and, you know, those kinds of things. It's kind of like, if we could just tell the real story and then we say, now this is what we've evolved to, then that's great, you know. So yes, there are tons of farming opportunities. We do a Halloween festival every year, and some of the farmers down on 3rd, they donate all these great pumpkins and are a part of our harvest festival and those things like that. So building community relations and being a part of what's going on is fantastic. I think part of my role is just say, okay, let's just peel back some layers and see how we got here.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And the food thing put me in mind of something. But you are on your way today to another festival back in the Fillmore.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. It's an annual.
Yeah. So my brother, he started an organization with a couple other men. I want to say, wow, maybe 20 years ago. It's been some time. And it's called Brothers for Change. And it's just it was an opportunity for young men to come together and make a difference in our communities, especially, again, with a lot of what was going on and within our age of, you know, mass incarceration, the heavy drug trafficking and everything going on in our community, just a way of young Black men to come together. And so they're celebrating 20 years, and every year they have what's called Black Family Day. And it's a positive experience for people of all ethnicities and nationalities to come out and join. And they have lots of food and music and resources. And so today happens to be the first day of Black Family Day since the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's having a street festival on O'Farrell and Fillmore. And again, it's going to be some good food. And my son is actually going to be barbecuing today. So that should be fun. He does a really good job. So yeah, they're going to be out there, be lots of food and vendors that you can shop and hang out, have a good time, some live music.
Yeah. Now, how many kids do you have?
So it's 4. Oh, I have 2. I'm sorry. I was thinking of my brother and my sister and I. But I have 2. However, between my first husband and my husband now, they both had children before we were married. So there's a lot
Right.
of stepkids as well.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So having relationships with young people coming up in San Francisco, do you find that you're telling them the stories? Well, back when I was,
I cannot believe that's my conversation now. Yes. But yeah, no. Actually, we just did a fish fry paint night over at the gallery. And so I found myself, when people are coming in, we're sharing the images on the wall, but then a lot, I'm so grateful, honestly, like from Bayview and the Fillmore, of the love and support that we have in bringing our visions and our dreams and our businesses to life. And so for the fish fry paint night, a lot of the guys that I grew up with that used to be around when I'm walking from home to the BART station, like, they all totally have been supportive. So they actually helped to put the fish fry on last Friday. And I found myself telling the stories of the images of the photos on the wall, but then also saying, oh, that's Donnie. Donnie started the first, he's one of the guys I grew up with, and he's been taking kids to the snow for their first time or their first experience every year. But he kind of went on hiatus for like 10 years. So now he's back. And so now he's fundraising to get the kids to the snow. And I'm like telling all these stories on, oh, he used to go to so-and-so and play basketball for, USF or, so it's like, yeah, I'm telling these stories of back when. Yeah.
But it's interesting, before we started talking live today, you were telling me a little bit about your son's journey, and just like growing up in the San Francisco and Bay Area of today, what a contrast, right, from when we were young. But that he was interested in industrial design, he was interested in the arts, but he recently purchased his own smoker. And it's like, when you talk about like carrying forward like a cultural heritage, and that his love of cooking, which of course we know that most of our best foods in this country are African and African American in origin, right? And this tradition is carried forward. You must be really proud.
Oh, I'm so proud. I was nervous. Because like I was telling you before, he got a scholarship to go to San Francisco State. But it was actually at the same time as the pandemic. And he was one of those many students who didn't get to experience a prom, or they didn't get to experience graduating together as a class, And so their first semester in college, they were shut behind a screen. And my son is such a people person. And so he did it for like one semester, and then suddenly I didn't hear anything about any of his classes or anything. And so he said, he's taking some time off. So I was really nervous. And then he got excited about the Academy of Art, because he's just a creative at nature. And tried that. And then that didn't work. And so he's doing security down at the Chase Center. And he came home from work one day, and I'm like, hey, so how was it? He's like, I love it. And I'm thinking to myself, all the private school, all the extracurricular activity, like all this is going through my head, and you love being a security guard at the Chase Center. But I'm also an entrepreneur at heart, and I always tell people to follow their passion, so I couldn't be a hypocrite, and for him to say he loves something, like he lit up, I lit up too, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so this is what we're doing, And then my daughter, she just started college. She's at Texas Southern University. She knew she wanted to leave. So she's doing really well. So she's staying on path, and she wants to be an ER physician. So she is excited about her chemistry classes and those kinds of things. So she's staying on the track that we plan. So my son, I noticed, like, literally I would get home at like 10 o'clock at night, and he's in the backyard barbecuing, and like he's back there till like 1 a.m, and his friends are coming over, and then one day I tasted some of the food, and I was like, wow, this is really good, and so then he did another dish or something, and then I told him, I said, I think you should really do something with your food, like let's focus on that, So he said, okay. And, he's still doing this thing down at the Chase Center. And then he told me he got an offer to cater an event. And so, like, he is totally focused, and he did his food handler's license online. Then he went and got his business license. Like, so now I'm seeing, like, this how serious he is about it.
Yeah.
And one of our friends that I grew up with, she took him out, and she actually bought the smoker for him. So again, just having that community support.
Right.
And so today, that's
Yeah.
his role.
So tell us the name of his barbecue business.
Oh, so the name of the business is called the Itis. And for those who may not be familiar with the Itis, I think it's an African American term. I don't know. But it's known for when you eat so much and you just don't have the energy to do anything else. And so you just want to sleep after you've eaten a huge meal.
It's like a food coma.
Yeah, a food coma. And
Yeah.
that's what they call the itis. Yes. Yeah. And so I was telling Denise that my son, his name is Savion, he's an old soul. So for him to even say the name of his business is the itis, like, I don't even use that term anymore. Like, I think I heard that like generations back.
Right.
But that's the name of his business, the Itis. Like, his food will put you in a food coma. Yeah.
It's awesome.
And it's pretty tasty. It's
All
pretty
right.
tasty.
So, event in the Fillmore today. The Harlem of the West show will be up.
It'll be up through December. And I just talked to one of the directors over at the Booker T. Washington Center, Community Center, and we're going to start hosting some senior groups to come over and, like you said, just have those conversations, and then they can actually point out who's who for us. So we're going to start doing that in next week, and we'll just have different senior groups. We've reached out to Dr. William L. Cobb, where I graduated from in elementary school. They're going to start bringing some kids over to see the show. And, I'm going to reach out to different schools and get people there.
Then we have the Honeybee Conversations.
The Honeybees
starting up.
Yes, those are going to be starting up next week as well, on Wednesday evenings. And we're going to just start talking about who's in our community, what's going on, and building some relationships.
Right. And then the Cultural District, an ongoing project, the Mural Project.
The Mural Project.
And ongoing. Where can people get the updates on the
Yes.
Cultural District and also the Honey Art
Yes.
Studio events?
Okay, so you definitely want to come out. We're doing a mural reveal for that Bank of America building on Thursday, October 20th at 1 p.m. We'll have lunch. We'll have some live entertainment. It'll be fun. But you can hear about more of our activities as well at sfaAACD.org. So that's San Francisco African American Arts and Cultural District.org. sfaAACD.org. And then Honey Art Studios. Right now we have paint nights. We have sewing classes. We're starting an interior design program for young people who are interested in interior design. And then we have the wonderful Harlem of the West photo exhibit, and that'll be going on through December. And you can get more information about that at honeyartstudio.org.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Ericka Scott, thank you for joining us today. Just a wealth of knowledge of different pockets and corners of the city. Really, really appreciate hearing from you. And best of luck getting, your family reunited.
Yes.
Hopefully, so much has happened since we last talked
I
that I hope the
know,
next time we
right?
talk, I can't even imagine.
I can't even imagine.
But
yeah.
really happy that your family is healthy and well, and good
thank
luck
you.
with the reunification of
Yeah.
the family. And
Okay.
thanks again.
Always a pleasure talking
Yeah.
to you. Thank you,
All
Denise.
right. We'll be back with SF Live's Live Talk Conversation next month, the second Sunday of the month. Our guest will be Josiah Luis Alderete, a poet and a bookman in his own right. And you can donate at all the usual places to the bookstore, Bird and Beckett. The information is right on your screen, right below me here. And we thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Gabby. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Eric.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
We did it right on the dot.
That's good timing.